Hello everyone, my name is Jennifer Kasselbuch and I'm the current president of the Nova Scotia Society for Diagnostic Medical Sonographers. With me today is Julie Avery. She's the executive director for the Nova Scotia Association of MRTs. We'd like to thank you for watching today's webinar on self-regulation. After attending a few conferences and hospital site visits, we noticed that there's still room to improve our membership's understanding of self-regulation. We're hoping that this webinar will act as a source of information that's available to you at your convenience to learn more about self-regulation and how it affects you and your employees. A few months ago, the NSCMIRTP sent out a request for questions from the employers in Nova Scotia, and these have been incorporated into today's webinar. If you do, however, have any further questions, just send us an email and we'll be happy to help however we can. So let's dive into this regulatory journey and share what we've encountered on the way. So our hope is that after this talk, you'll have a better understanding of what self-regulation is, why it's important, and how it will affect you and your employees. We'll explore what the NSCMIRTP and NSCMIRTP have been up to, and we'll discuss where some other provinces are at with regulation and hopefully answer some of the frequently asked questions throughout this talk. So for this webinar, we won't be diving too much into the legalities of what it means to self-regulate and the processes behind it, but we do want to give a brief overview. So let's begin with the question of who is being regulated. Today, we're talking to you specifically about the formation of the Nova Scotia College of Medical Imaging and Radiation Therapy Professionals. This college is being formed by the combination of the NSCMIRTP and the NSCMIRTP, and it will govern MRTs and sonographers in Nova Scotia. This will include diagnostic medical sonographer, magnetic resonance technologist, nuclear medicine technologists, radiation therapists, and radiological technologists. Now on to the next question. What is self-regulation in layman's terms? The term itself sounds like we get to make the rules for ourselves, which is true so long as the decisions follow recognized good regulation practices. Self-regulation is not something that's uncommon amongst health professions, and there's actually currently more than 20 health regulatory colleges in Nova Scotia, such as those representing nurses, physiotherapists, and physicians. This is because we have the best understanding of our practices. Our college has been shaped by people who understand our profession. If your employee finds themselves facing certain disciplinary action, they won't be judged by someone who has no idea what the variables in their case may be. A committee of their peers, along with a public member, will assess all complaints. The responsibilities and duties are outlined by people who have worked in the medical imaging and radiation therapy careers and understand what is expected of us as healthcare professionals. Self-regulation will help us to better serve and protect the public interest in the practice of the profession. We also want to preserve the integrity of the profession and maintain public confidence in the ability of the profession to regulate itself. So while I did mention we don't want to dive too much into legal terminology, it is important for you to be aware of what documents are guiding our journey to becoming a college. The first one I'll mention is our Act, which is called the Medical Imaging and Radiation Therapy Professionals Act. So it's been called this since receiving the Royal Assent in 2013. The Act is an approved bill which defines the use of protected titles such as diagnostic medical sonographer and MRT. It also defines who the board is, as well as who's going to be allowed to be a registrant, and through that, who will be licensed. This Act is what will legally allow us to form a college once the regulations are proclaimed by the provincial government. If you're interested, you can actually find the final version of the Act on the NSCMIRTP and NSCMIRTP website, either through the provided link, or you can just find it by Googling it as well. So we also have draft regulations which outline the duties, the responsibilities, obligations, and rights of all those who belong to the regulated body. These draft regulations are called the Medical Imaging and Radiation Therapy Professionals Regulations. They were voted on by members in 2010 and were submitted to the Department of Health and Wellness in 2013, after we received the Royal Assent to form our Act. They have since been updated to reflect changes to the Act. They're still considered draft regulations as they have not been approved by the government yet. It's expected that there will be changes to the regulations once the government begins to review their processes. You can find these draft regulations on the NSCMIRTP website as well, just in case you didn't have enough fun reading the Act. So, an area of self-regulation that many individuals have had a difficult time differentiating between is what it means to have a credential and what it means to have a license. So credentials are obtained by successful completion of a program such as a degree or diploma. Once you have successfully completed a credential, it cannot be taken away. There are no ongoing requirements to the credential. Passing the National Entry to Practice exam is another example of a credential that is achieved. Often entrance to practice exams are developed and delivered by the regulatory body, but SNARFI Canada and CMRT will carry out this role for Nova Scotia. At the consent of the regulator, the national associations can grant this credential. Once you pass the entrance to practice exam, it cannot be taken away, and you will always have this credential. Credentials can be dated, but they cannot be lost. So for example, a technologist who wrote the entrance to practice exam in 1970 and has not practiced since 1980 still has these credentials of passing the national exam and graduation from a recognized program, but these credentials are no longer recognized as sufficient for licensing as they are dated and the currency criteria is absent since they haven't been working. The criteria for licensing and renewal for the college will be outlined in later slides. While attaining the credential of passing the National Entrance to Practice exam is required for licensing, maintaining membership with SNARFI Canada or CMRT will not be a requirement for licensing. Licensing will also require ongoing criteria such as CPDs, currency, and good character be met annually. So it's important to remember that maintaining National Association memberships will give sonographers and MRTs many benefits, such as the purchase of personal liability insurance, increased CPD opportunities, and being part of a national voice. As regulation of sonography and MRTs progresses across Canada, it's anticipated that practice standards across the country will be substantially similar. This will allow portability between the provinces for licensing without proof of credentials being necessary, just proof of good standing. Currently, only 6 of the provinces are regulated for MRTs and 2 for sonographers. For provinces who are not regulated, it would be the employer dependent on what credentials are required for employment. The requirements would likely be inconsistent amongst employers and lower than those required by regulators, because for some employers, on-the-job training may be deemed sufficient, whereas this wouldn't be sufficient for regulators. So self-regulation is important for many reasons, as you can see, but 2 of these reasons actually align with the 2 mandates of our college. The primary mandate is to protect the public by ensuring professional competency. The secondary mandate is to support the registrants. The college will do that by helping registrants to remain current in their profession by offering CPD opportunities, conferences, etc. Our goal with self-regulation will be to have member control over our profession. There will be entry to practice requirements, licensing criteria, a clearly defined scope of practice, and disciplinary process. There will be continuing professional development criteria, protection of titles such as diagnostic medical sonographer and medical radiation technologist. This will ensure only licensed individuals are able to practice as MRTs and DMSs in the province, and that employers will have an effective means of identifying licensed individuals who have met entrance to practice standards. We'll have a governing board that will protect the public, and then sonographers and MRTs in Nova Scotia will be on a level playing field with other professionals. So what roles beyond regulation of members will the college have? The college will host annual educational events, hold annual general meetings, offer continuing professional development opportunities, and strive for the advancement of the profession through respect and networking with other regulated healthcare professionals. Also, the college will offer financial assistance each year to support registrants in attending leadership and educational events. So how is it going to affect my employees? After hearing all of this about protecting the public and gaining respect, what does self-regulation mean for the individual sonographer or MRT? There will be challenges such as the mandatory dues rates, which the MRTs have already been registering and renewing with the $450 dues rates since about 2016, but this is going to be a new endeavor for sonographers. MRTs and sonographers will be required to register with the college to be allowed to work in their profession. They will have improved CPD opportunities, protection of their practice and profession, complaint processes in place, improved professionalism, and important documents of reference such as the Code of Ethics and the Standards of Practice. These documents can be found on the NSCMIRTP website and should definitely be reviewed by the employees as well as the employers in order to know what is expected of them in daily practice. The standards are quite general so that they can apply to all 5 disciplines of our college. So the Continuing Professional Development, or CPD program, is a mandatory component of registration in the college, and it's required of all regulated members. This will be one way in which we ensure that our registrants are remaining current in their professions and providing the best care to their patients. College registrants will be required to complete 30 CPD credits every 2 years. This amount does not change if you are a casual or part-time employee, and there will be no rollover of unused credits into the next cycle. Non-compliance with the requirements of the CPDs is deemed to exhibit unprofessional conduct and could place a member's practice license at risk. Continued non-compliance could lead to suspension of their license. As soon as the college is formed, the CPD program will begin. The cycle goes from November 1st to October 31st, 2 years following. If the college is formed partway through the cycle, the amount of CPD credits required will be prorated. Credits will also be prorated based on the registrant calendar month of registration. So your employee will be able to upload the CPDs through an online platform on the college website. And it's expected that most of the activities used for the college CPD credits can also be used for credits for other bodies such as Sonography Canada. There's going to be a grandparenting period for registrants once the college is proclaimed. In the case of sonographers, the college will only recognize Sonography Canada credentials after the grandparenting period is over. So this means that sonographers who do not have Sonography Canada credentials will be required to obtain appropriate training and the credentials if they do not register during that grandparenting period. The grandparenting period is expected to be about 6 months, and during that period, the college will accept the following currently practicing sonographers. First, sonographers who have Sonography Canada credentials and graduated from an accredited school. Second, sonographers who have ARDMS credentials and have worked as a sonographer in Canada in the last 12 months. And thirdly, sonographers who do not have any sonography credentials, but have been working in ultrasound in Canada in each of the past 5 years. This grandparenting in criteria applies to sonographers across the country. So this means that sonographers who are working in non-regulated provinces who wish to move to a regulated province in the future should consider being assessed during the grandparenting in period. There are also several exceptions for sonography practice at the IWK, which is affecting nurses working in the Fetal Assessment and Treatment Centre or the Children's Heart Centre at the time that the Act becomes enforced. For specifics around these exceptions, please contact us to discuss. MRTs will continue to require the same credentials and not be licensed, so MRT criteria will not change, and therefore no grandparenting in period will be required for MRTs. So what happens to new sonographers and MRTs? What will happen to new graduates or newcomers to the province? For new graduates from an approved accredited program in Canada, there will be a temporary license after graduation available until the graduate assess the first sitting of the Sonography Canada or CAMRT exams. If they fail, their temporary license is revoked and an individual cannot practice until they pass the national exam. If an individual graduates from a non-accredited program, they cannot write the national exam, and so they're ineligible for licensing. There's some exceptions, however, with this in Quebec. Internationally educated individuals will be referred to CAMRT and Sonography Canada to be assessed for substantive equivalency. If their educational and clinical program are found to be equivalent, then they meet other requirements, then they're allowed to access the National Entrance Practice Exam. So you may now be wondering about what other provinces are doing with self-regulation, especially in relation to job portability. Self-regulation is occurring in many provinces, and a lot of these provinces are approaching self-regulation in different ways. It's an employee's professional responsibility to be aware of what the regulations and requirements in different provinces are, especially if they're planning on practicing anywhere other than Nova Scotia. So this will also include short-term work like locums, which may require temporary work permits. Self-regulated provinces will have different CPD programs, and some may require personal liability insurance, while others may not. Some provinces are joining already existing colleges, whereas some, like Nova Scotia, are forming their own colleges. Quebec's a bit different, as sonography is part of the radiological technology diploma and not a separate specialty. However, as of 2020, it will be a separate specialty and licensed as such. So as you can see from the list here, there are many other provinces that are also on the path towards self-regulation. And as it was mentioned earlier, the hope for the future is that the job portability will be hassle-free, and all you'll have to do is look up if a registrant is in good standing with another province's college. So over the last few slides, we've been discussing what professional expectations there are for your employees. Some of these expectations may also be expected of yourself if you're an MRT or of sonography background, even if you're not practicing in the clinical setting. In the next few slides, we'll be specifically discussing your duties in your role as manager or director. As an employer, all hires of imaging technologists and therapists must have proof of being licensed. Production of a card or receipt cannot be considered adequate proof of licensing, as these documents are a moment in time and may not reflect current status of an individual's registration with the college. At the time of hiring or return from a leave, employers are required to document current status with the college. This can be done by checking the membership directory, which gives real-time registration and licensing status. Each year during the renewal, the employer should check the status of the license, which can be done with the presentation of a receipt, registration card, or checking the membership directory. Additionally, licensing and renewal criteria allows employers to have a clear understanding of what minimum standards are required from all MRTs and sonographers. The duty to report will be a new aspect to practice for MRTs and sonographers. This duty applies to reporting registrants to the college and to other professions if the employer has reasonable grounds to believe that a registrant is guilty of professional misconduct, incapacity, or otherwise endangering the public. This will require some education of registrants, as the college does not want this to be interpreted as everything needs to be reported to us. We do not want to manage daily performance, as this is the employer's role. It is expected proper paths of reporting are followed. So this means that most concerns should initially be reported to a registrant's manager. The manager would do due diligence and respond appropriately. For example, one mistake in procedure does not rise to incompetence, and a pattern should be reported to a manager, who should then develop a plan to address deficiencies. If the employer is not successful, then the college should be contacted. The college should be contacted immediately if the concern is due to an issue that presents ongoing risk of harm to patients, such as addiction, dementia, or any suspected offenses of a sexual nature. So now I'm going to pass it over to Julie to talk about what the NSSDMS and NSAMRT are up to.
Thank you for joining our webinar. NSAMRT and NSSDMS have been actively preparing for a smooth transition once proclamation of the college occurs. Many volunteer hours have been committed into striving for excellence of our professions. Over the next few slides, we'll explore what our boards have accomplished, some history of our groups, and where we would like to be in the future. We have had many achievements since beginning the process of developing a college in 2010, which was when NSSDMS members voted to join forces with NSAMRT. 3 years later, we received royal assent, creating our Act, Bill 70. Although the proclamation of our regulations had been stalled, the NSMRT and NSSDMS continue to work diligently at moving forward as a college. We have worked on foundational college documents such as our standards of practice and made operational improvements to assist us in being more effective as a regulator. This includes a new website, registration platform, document storage platform, financial process, and delivery of educational opportunities to members, such as the first ever Atlantic MRT conference. We're looking forward to achieving more, but are quite proud of the work our volunteer-based organization has completed. Many volunteer hours have gone into all the projects and documents, but in addition to creating base documents and improving operational efficiencies, we are actively working on reaching our members in new ways and creating an ease of access for all the rural sites, as well as e-voting and webinar platforms. Another area of focus is networking. We have formed proactive partnerships by attending stakeholder meetings and conferences, as well as forming new alliances with many other professional societies and associations. All these activities align with our new strategic plan that will direct our activities for the next 4 years. This plan is available on the NSMRT website. With all of this currently going on, though, you might be wondering what's in store for the future. Well, this is the moment we've all been waiting for, is proclamation. This will hopefully be accompanied by a seamless integration of the NSCMIRT and the NSAMRT and the NSSDMS, because once we are proclaimed, NSAMRT and NSSDMS will cease to exist and the new college will come into being. This will be a huge undertaking for us, as we do not have the emails or contact information for many of the sonographers in Nova Scotia. As of the beginning of May 2019, the Department of Health and Wellness began reviewing our regulations with the hope of completing this review by the end of the summer 2019. If everything goes smoothly, it is expected the proclamation will occur sometime in 2020. Further information will be communicated as it becomes available. This will include a communication campaign to reach out to all MRTs and sonographers, the public and employers, to ensure all individuals have access to the information they need. This will include site visits across the province, brochures and posters, social media and email communication, and working with the employers. Once proclaimed, we expect to have 6 months to become compliant with the new act and regulations. I hope we answered all your questions and maybe refreshed your memory on what it is that NSSDMS and NSAMRT have been up to. Our key messages from this talk would be that self-regulation will provide protection of the public and advancement of the profession. Finally, we hope that this presentation has opened an avenue of communication and support for future communications. If you would like to remain in the loop, you can check out these different websites, social media platforms, and email to do so. If you have any questions, please email or phone us. We also have an easy-to-read, frequently asked documents, which will be emailed to all those interested in receiving a copy, as well as posted to our websites. Thank you so much for your time. We hope this presentation was helpful.